Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the man, myth, the legend, Mr. Rylas Dana. How you doing, sir?
Hello, doing great. Always love talking on this channel, being a part of this audience, and get my chance to participate.
Yeah, the audience loves you. They appreciate your deep dive. Remind the folks who may be seeing you for the first time, what is your day job?
So probate and estate planning, Arizona and California is my day job.
You
So
are an attorney, one of those guys that went to school forever.
yeah, it kind of seems like it. Yeah, 4 years college, 3 years law school,
Yeah.
and then annually we're required to do stuff.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah,
I just
so go ahead. Sorry.
And so I just got back. Last time I was in California, so I was zooming from California. Got to go surfing after.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
Back in Arizona, but in between, I was in Tennessee at a lawyer convention, the Clio Cloud Conference. So it was fun to be around other attorneys. But I really enjoy the real estate group a lot better, I would say.
Yeah, I got to imagine a conference with a bunch of attorneys. Probably not the most exciting, invigorating of. I wouldn't think. Maybe again, not my jam, so I don't know. But yeah, I would think a real estate event would be a lot more fun.
Yeah. So it was a good event. They try to make it exciting, but yeah, this real estate group, I feel like you're really my people. So the investors, really good business people. And so today we can talk about is a question I get a lot. But one of the questions I get is what's the best type of trust to have? So I don't know, people, especially like retired people, I think they talk about this a lot at cocktail parties and things like that. And sometimes the subject is, well, do you want an irrevocable trust or a revocable trust? I heard so-and-so, so-and-so said that irrevocable trust will protect my money and make it where it's out of reach from creditors. So there is some truth to that. But a revocable trust is usually what most people set up. So revocable, if you want to get technical, it's revocable.
Oh, it's not even revocable; it's revocable. Okay.
Yeah,
See all these
that's the
vocabulary.
proper pronunciation. So
There you go.
I mean, the other day at that conference, I had to say revocable. But
Lawyers.
I feel like most people say revocable.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
Revokes kind of sounds like a verb, right? Where you can undo it.
Mhm.
So you can. So the general rule with a revocable trust is if you can freely get to your money,
Mhm.
so can your creditors.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
And another general rule I'll say too is if you give to an irrevocable trust, generally you can't control it.
Oh,
So
okay.
so if you, Michael, were wanting to create an irrevocable trust
Mhm.
that gave you some sort of protections, generally you can't control it.
Got it. Okay.
So my answer to what's the best type of trust, revocable or irrevocable, here's my answer. Here's what you want. You want the best type of trust to have is an irrevocable trust that someone creates for you. You want, so if I gave you something inside of an irrevocable trust, we could design it in a way where you're also in charge of it.
Okay.
Because you didn't create it, right? It was a
Right.
gift what you received. So you never controlled the item.
Okay.
But if I could give you something inside of a trust that says, well, Michael, I'm not going to give you this house.
Mhm.
I'm going to give you this trust. This trust
Got it.
owns a house.
Right.
You got to control the trust,
Mhm.
but it's an irrevocable trust. So another thing of kind of generality, we can say the irrevocable trust is it's separate from you. It
Right.
files its own tax return. It's different. A revocable trust does not get its own tax ID number. When the person creates a
Oh.
revocable trust,
Mhm.
your bank accounts don't get a new tax ID number. You don't start filing a new tax return for the trust. You do your taxes the same way.
Okay.
But with an irrevocable trust, it's going to be separate. It has its own tax ID number, its own identity, right? It's separate from Michael Zuber, the irrevocable trust.
Got it. Okay. All right.
So in estate planning, we call this concept, I call it a dynasty trust. It's a commonly used term.
Okay.
The technical term is a generation skipping trust. That's getting into some tax terms. Generation skipping, technically it's a generation skipping transfer tax.
Oh, okay.
Some people call it GSTT, generation skipping transfer tax trust. So
TTT.
but
Wow.
this big picture here, what that generation skipping is, the generation skipping tax.
Mhm.
The government's onto this, right? Uncle Sam's like, hey, wait a minute, if we have an estate tax,
Yep.
we want to get something every time someone dies, right? We want to get it when the parents die, when the kids die, we want to get, our money again.
They want to get paid.
Yeah, at every generation. So
Okay.
the sound of generation skipping, it sounds like you may be skipping a level of beneficiaries, but really you're skipping taxes.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure I understood this, right? When you talk about, I'll just call it a dynasty trust. I like that term. This could be mom and dad in their 60s or 70s planning for, they're what would you call it? We all die, right? It's undefeated. We haven't figured out how to beat that yet. So when they set up this dynasty trust, it's not that it's skipping their kids and going to grandkids. It's skipping some tax implications, but it could still pass to their kids.
Correct. So
okay. I like that.
Currently the limit, the amount that can go in there is about $12 million.
Wow.
So,
that's going to cover most people.
Yeah, definitely covers most people. And a married couple can do a little bit more complicated trust and get in 12 million times 2.
Now let's just so I make sure of this. Let's go back to the 12 million instead of a married couple. If they had 2 kids, is it 12 million total, or could they do dynasty trust for son and then dynasty trust for daughter and thus do 24 million? Or is the 12 million the cap that goes down, or is it the trust where the cap is?
The total. So the 12 million is a cap going down.
So they could, in that case, just to tie it out, it would be 6 million, 6 million.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And then here's how I draft my trust. I always have a formula in there. I call it the GST filter clause. Let's say the estate was $13 million and the limit was 12 million. So it would put 6 and 6 in each of their dynasty trusts, the full amount. Yep. And then they would each get another $500,000 outside of the dynasty trust.
Got it. So you take full advantage of the limitation and then you do the rest outside because it's going to get hit anyways.
Correct.
Okay. I like that. It makes total sense to me.
So this dynasty trust, there is some tax things to it, right? It's an estate tax strategy. It's a tried and true advanced estate planning technique. Now, earlier in my career, so when I was in college, 20 years ago, the exemption was much lower.
Right.
It was around $1 million or $3 million. So it was a lot more common that people were doing these types of trusts. Because here's another big thing about the dynasty trust that we haven't even talked about yet. It's not subject to the estate tax again.
Oh.
So going back to that $13 million example, 2 kids. So they would get $6 million in their dynasty trust.
Each. Yep.
Each. And another $500,000.
Right.
Whatever that 6 million grows to, let's say they buy a real estate portfolio with it and they turn it into 25 million.
Okay. All right.
So when they pass, it goes to their kids, the grandkids. Guess how much of that 25 million will be subject to the estate tax?
Are you telling me zero?
Zero.
Because it stayed in the trust.
Correct. Yeah.
And you don't get taxed twice. It's already been hit once, theoretically on the first pass down. It's not hitting. Wow, that's pretty sexy.
Yeah. So once we clear that estate tax hurdle, right? Once we get it into that dynasty trust, it keeps going for generation to generation. So that's the
Now, just so I'm clear, because that's super sexy. So we go from 6 to, like, let's say the daughter, just for this example, she was given 6 in the trust. She grows it to 25. Let's say she has 4 kids. Does it have to stay in that dynasty trust as a whole at 25, or could she, or maybe it's 24, so she can divide out by, what happens next to the 4 kids?
Yeah. So here's how I draft my trust.
Okay.
I usually like to make them flexible, where we give the kids options.
Okay.
You can tie it down and say they have to do this, or when they die, it will go here.
Okay.
But the way I like to draft them is, first we say by default, it's going to go to their kids. So if they don't do anything, by default, it would go to her 4 kids.
Understood.
Okay. Again, in dynasty trust, still in dynasty trust.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And then we'll also give them what's called a power of appointment, where they can decide where the trust goes. So this is a lot of flexibility. So they can, so if they never have any kids, or sometimes, my joke I always make is the power of disappointment.
Yeah, you're not getting any money, son.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
sorry.
that's the default, but
yeah, you were mean to me. You're not getting anything. Yeah, I got you. Disappointment. I like that. Okay.
But it puts the kids in full control. So pretty sweet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I draft our trust typically is we let the kids become the trustee at age 35 or some other age. Sometimes I do it based on time, especially if the kids aren't used to making 7-8 figure decisions.
Yeah,
we'll have someone else in there as a trustee for 3 years or 5 years, just kind of show them the ropes and like, look, like this is designed to protect you. Like this is not trying to restrict you in any way. You don't be trying to pull money out of the trust, but if you leave it in here, you can do everything you want, but have a layer of protection and tax savings.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. Yeah. So I think there's a lot in the Dynasty Trust. Obviously, you're the attorney. This is what you do for a day job. If somebody's in California or Arizona wanted to follow you or reach out and ask questions about their situation, how should they do that?
Yeah, so I practice law. It's danalegalhelp.com. You can reach out to my website there. It's probably the best way. And you call my office and they can book us a consultation and we talk about your specific plan. So I would say kind of 2 ways as we're talking about this. One, this is what you want to do for your kids. And then this is what you want for yourself, right? So when someone asks me, what's the best type of trust? That's it, right? But really the magic is you get someone to create it for you. So if mom and dad are, doing their trust, or that's a hard subject to bring up sometimes with mom and dad, right? Like, hey, what am I going to get? Huh? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Or what? So,
yeah.
But
there's one more thing I want to ask, kind of a vocabulary word, if you don't mind. So again, Dynasty Trust, you're in Arizona, California, reach out to Rylas. He's the man. He's helping. He did a deep dive on my channel. You can actually look on this channel. There's a playlist called Deep Dive. He did an estate and probate discussion a couple weeks ago. It's must watch. But there's a term I heard that I don't understand. It's called decanting. I have no idea what that is in legal speak or trust speak. What is decanting?
Yeah. Another one of my favorite topics. So this is something newer to California. Arizona's had it a little bit longer. And before that, they were doing it in New York and some of these other places. But first, let's talk about kind of the wine term where they borrowed it from. So I believe decanting is pouring from one barrel to another barrel is kind of the idea of it. The technical name for this is a way to non-judicially amend an irrevocable trust. So non-judicially, meaning without court.
Okay.
So a big problem we're seeing right now, there's a lot of crappy irrevocable trusts out there.
Go figure.
right? Where people did trust and they suck or they're not working for one reason or another. And how do you fix these things?
Mhm.
So, states have realized this and they've passed laws that outline how you can change an irrevocable trust without going to court
Got it.
because they don't want the courts to get bogged down with these things. Now,
Makes total sense.
something I've seen commonly is call them ILITs, irrevocable life insurance trust.
Hmm.
So again, when the exemption against the estate tax was much lower, it was common for people to buy a big life insurance policy and put it in an irrevocable trust.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
then that's outside of their estate. So then the proceeds, if it's a $10 million policy, that 10 million doesn't get added to the value of their estate.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So it
All right.
creates liquidity to pay estate taxes and do other things. But those, again, so people needed those when the exemption was at $1 million, but maybe not when it's at $12 million. And I've seen problems where there's no trustees. Maybe the agent was the trustee or some CPA was the trustee that set it up, but now they've retired and there's no one that wants to take on this thing.
Right. Hmm.
So decanting is a way to solve those problems.
Mhm.
And debatably, I would say it may be possible to amend your parents' trust. So a revocable trust becomes irrevocable once the trust creators die.
Okay. Yep.
As long as they're alive, they can change it. It's revocable, but once they pass away, it's irrevocable.
Makes sense.
So I think it's possible that we can say, oh man, mom and dad, they meant to do this dynasty trust and estate tax planning.
Mhm.
There's ways where we can decant the trust. Now we can't completely rewrite it. We have to keep the same beneficiaries and the same things. As I was at that conference, I was nerding out with other attorneys about decanting in their states. So some states it's really limited. Like I was talking to someone from Seattle, and the approach they use is they actually first they move it to a Nevada trust, and then Nevada has more broad powers.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then they move it back to Washington. But in Arizona and in California, we can clearly do those things. We have a law, a state statute saying that, here's a process you can follow if you need to amend an irrevocable trust. So I think that's a great opportunity, if someone's receiving an inheritance and mom and dad, if you couldn't get them to do the planning during their life, some people just don't want to acknowledge these things. But if they have even a basic trust, it may be possible to go back in and add those things that they intended to do, right? That they would have done if they could have.
Awesome. Well, this, folks, is why Rylas is on the channel. There's so many things he just said. I have to watch this video 3 or 4 times to really understand them. Do yourself a favor. If you're in California, Arizona, just book a call with him. Reach out to his team. Rylas, one more time, how should they look you up?
Dana Legal Help is my law firm website. You can find me there. And then on YouTube, I have a lot of videos under Maat Legal, MAAT Legal. So you can see more videos about Dynasty Trust and this topic.
Very cool. Thank you for all you do. I appreciate you, man. Have a great week. We'll talk next week.
Thank you.